Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Batteries on Board. We'll be talking about lithium battery compliance and some tips and tricks when exporting or importing lithium batteries. My name is Travis Falasco. I've been the Dangerous Goods Manager at Flexport for about 2 years now. Before Flexport, I was in the U.S. Air Force for 8 years, and for 4 of those years, I was a hazmat inspector for all U.S. military cargo during the Iraq and Afghanistan war effort when we were ramping up over there. So I've seen all hazard classes, all types of dangerous goods you can think of. And now I am more or less the lithium battery specialist here at Flexport because that is the current hot button issue with our current client base. Just to give you a heads up, so today's webinar will be discussing about 10 to 15 minutes worth of content. I'll just go a brief overview of lithium batteries, and then we'll follow up about 30 minutes of live Q&A. So first step, it's obviously source your product and what to ask your supplier. Do you have a dangerous goods certification? This is the most important question that you need to ask of your supplier. IATA stipulates in the regulations that the supplier or shipper is solely responsible for complying with all dangerous goods regulations and must be fully competent on how to prepare a lithium battery shipment and all supporting documentation for international transport. So you want to definitely ask your supplier if anyone on their staff is DG certified or has a DG license from IATA. It should never be your job to figure out if your product is considered dangerous or not. Your supplier is, again, required by law to declare this to you, to declare this to the freight forwarder and the airline that they have manufactured a lithium battery that falls under dangerous goods regulations and that they've complied with all documentation and packaging requirements. So again, the only question you need to ask is if they're DG certified, and then if the answer is yes, then you should feel safe. If the answer is no, you should seriously consider working with a different supplier because it's only going to cause you trouble in the end. So can you provide an MSDS for lithium batteries? So any carrier, ocean or air, is always going to require a material safety data sheet, which basically talks about the technical aspects of the battery itself. Basically, they want to see how powerful this thing is. And please note that an MSDS is never certifying a product. So if you're shipping, let's say, Bluetooth speakers, for example, there will be no MSDS for Bluetooth speakers. It's for the battery that's contained within the Bluetooth speaker. And the MSDS doesn't know how that battery is shipped. And that is what determines DG classification, is the MSDS plus the supplier's booking form to confirm I am shipping just a box of batteries or I am shipping products with batteries inside. Another thing important to note on the MSDS is that it's only good for 1 year. Every year, IATA publishes a new dangerous goods regulation, and a new MSDS has to be generated to follow suit with the new regulation. So January 1st of every year, you should be pushing your supplier, hey, please make sure you have an updated MSDS. Obviously, this is very costly for the supplier, so they'll do everything they can to avoid this. Some airlines, obviously don't check 100%, so sometimes they may get away with it, and your supplier could say, oh, I've shipped this many times before, never an issue. But you don't want to be that one shipment where the airline does the random inspection and catches that your MSDS is expired, and now your shipment is refused, and then you have to deal with those problems. So always make sure your supplier is updating your MSDS every year. I would say the next most important question is, do they have experience shipping internationally? Many suppliers in China only ship domestically, and shipping lithium batteries, whether it be truck within China or truck within the US, is very easy and much less unregulated as compared to shipping with air. So if your supplier has no experience shipping lithium batteries internationally, this is something you want to take into consideration because shipping lithium batteries is quite extensive. There is lots of documentation that is needed. Even if it is found out that your battery falls under non-DG classification, there are still many steps that need to be followed to make sure it's transported in accordance with what's called PI 967 Section 2 regulations for lithium-ion batteries. So if they have that experience, then you should feel confident. If they don't, then again, you might want to seriously consider working with another supplier. So what exactly is included in this shipment? You always want to be very, very clear with your supplier what exactly they are bringing to you. Let's say you're shipping Bluetooth speakers with batteries inside, and your supplier asks, hey, do you want us to send you another carton with spare batteries just in case? And you're like, sure, that sounds great. And we have found on many occasions the supplier will not declare that single carton of spare batteries as a fully regulated DG item as they're supposed to, because they think, oh, this whole consignment is 100 cartons, what's the chance they'll catch this one? Well, we've seen it many times where the airline has caught that one. And because they take lithium batteries very, very seriously, sometimes they're inspecting every single master carton, and that one carton will hold up the entire consignment because they now flag this supplier as not being totally honest. And what else are they trying to get through dangerous goods regulations or customs for that matter? So make sure that you know exactly what you're importing and your supplier is correctly classifying each and every product. And again, if your supplier is asking you like, hey, I need this label, are you sure this is okay? You should not have to validate this for your supplier. They are required by law to follow all regulations and just present a fully prepared lithium battery shipment for transport to you. So some things to consider when shipping lithium batteries. So non-compliance is actually more common than you think. So I touched this on a little bit. So just know that it is compliance for lithium batteries is not freight forwarder to freight forwarder. We don't have different rules and regulations. It all comes from IATA, which all comes to United Nations. And a Chinese supplier will do everything they possibly can to avoid cost or extra paperwork on their end, which includes misdeclaring goods to customs and the airlines to avoid fees required of, properly declaring to customs and preparing a shipment for dangerous goods. We see a lot of times where the supplier complains like, oh, I've shipped this many, many times with my local forwarder, never had an issue. It's because they have handshake deals with their local forwarders, and they know if they ship with them, they can misdeclare through customs. And most of the time, honestly, it'll be okay. Chinese customs can't catch everything, and a lot of stuff's being sent to the US. But Flexport especially will not operate in that manner. We'll make sure that every rule that IATA publishes is followed to the T. So we'll make sure that the supplier has a valid MSDS, cartons are properly labeled, and all aspects of the dangerous goods regulations are complied with. So important thing to note when shipping any type of DG, whether it be lithium batteries or flammable liquids or anything, that airlines hold the ultimate authority in acceptance for cargo. So even if your supplier has followed the regulations 100%, everything is perfect, the airline could still say, we refuse this shipment, we don't feel comfortable. Or they don't even have to give you a reason. They could just outright refuse the shipment. And it doesn't matter if they've accepted the exact same shipment for 20 years straight. They have the ultimate authority one day just say, nope, sorry, we don't want to take it because of what we saw in the news, or we just don't feel comfortable. I've experienced a situation where a client was importing a cell phone case that also enhanced the iPhone camera function, but it also acted as a battery power supply for the phone. The main argument was that the primary purpose of the case was to power the camera, not the phone. So they actually submitted all the documentation and technical specifications to IATA directly. IATA agreed, like, yes, this is not a power bank. This is a product with a battery inside. Signed an official letter. The client gave this letter directly to the airline, and the airline said, doesn't matter. We don't care what IATA says. It is our aircraft. We will determine the proper classification based on our own guidelines. So it's important to know that IATA's dangerous goods regulations are not legally binding. They are just recommendations that most airlines follow to keep their planes safe, but they do hold the ultimate authority to make more stringent regulations past IATA based on whatever requirements they see fit. So shipping dangerous goods in and out of China is extremely tricky and complicated. Please just make sure that you're well aware that shipments can be refused for any time, for any reason. Last thing that I want to mention is when you're shipping liquids, powders, or oils, a lot of times these things are not dangerous. Like some people are importing oil diffusers, which are completely harmless. But you have to think from a carrier's perspective, they see on the manifest oils, they have no idea if this is a flammable oil, a poisonous oil, or just a harmless oil for scent. So that's why if you're planning on importing any liquids, powders, or oils, you must make sure that your supplier does have a valid MSDS on file for that product, basically to certify that the commodity is not dangerous. The carriers will always require this, ocean or air. They will refuse any shipment if it does not have this. And again, your supplier will push back and say, this is ridiculous. I've never needed an MSDS for this product. It's no way dangerous. I'm not paying to have an MSDS created for this. You just have to be firm with them that these are the requirements of the carriers, not the requirements of the freight forwarder. They need proof that what they're bringing on their vessel or airplane is not going to blow it up. So they just need the MSDS as reassurance. So please make sure you have this to prevent any delays and to hopefully prevent your cargo from being rejected by the carrier. So that's about it. Just talking about the basics of lithium batteries and things you need to be aware that your supplier needs to have in order to prevent any delays in and out of China. So now we'll follow up with any questions. Just please use the question form in Go Meeting, and then I'll respond to them as quickly as possible. So I've got a question from Peter. Our product includes a tiny 30 milliamp lithium 3-volt watch battery. It is encased in polycarbonate and is not accessible by the user. I'm not sure an MSDS is needed for this. So it doesn't matter how big or small a lithium battery is, MSDS will always be required because the airlines are not going to open up your product and see truly what battery is inside of it. They need something in writing that has proof how powerful your battery is. They go off a watt-hour scale. So rule of thumb is if you have a product with a battery inside and the MSDS confirms the watt-hour is less than 100, then your product will fall under Section 2 classification, which is non-DG. But again, an MSDS will be needed to confirm that. And then sometimes, like in this question, your product or the MSDS will give you the milliamp hour of voltage. So to find out the watt hour, you just multiply your milliamp hour times your voltage, divide by 1,000, and that gives you your watt hour. So less than 100, you should be good. Next question from Julie. You mentioned China is difficult. What about other countries? So I would say shipping out of China is the most stringent of all of the countries. If you look at the dangerous goods regulation, there is a list of countries that has published rules about extra rules they want to adhere to in addition to IATA. I would say there really isn't much of an issue country per country. The main issue goes airline to airline. So airlines have unanimously agreed to tying down the rules on accepting lithium batteries. So it's really up to the airline. And it's hard to track because the airline could publish rules saying, yes, we accept them, and the next day they say, no, we don't. So unfortunately, you just have to, it really is a roll of the dice situation. So Matthews, let me know, we try to ship spare batteries through Flexport to RCM in China without success. What is the success rate, and how can we ensure Flexport is able to ship dangerous goods on our behalf? So the best case scenario to get your products out of China is when you're submitting your quote request, fully disclose whether you're just shipping batteries or batteries inside products, provide the MSDS, and if you have it, your pro forma invoice. We can then submit that to carriers at the time of quoting and see if any carriers will accept the MSDS as is. And then if we get an acceptance, then we can provide a rate. If not, then obviously we can't ship it. But a lot of times people, I understand like there's an urgent need to get things out, so quotes are booked and accepted, and basically gambling to see if the carrier will accept it. I mean, that's your greatest chance to get out there as fast as possible, but if you want to be absolutely sure, just have all the documents presented at the time of quoting, and then the Year Ops team can check with the carrier offline and see if they'll accept your product. And then Julie asks, what about other types of batteries that are not lithium? So like that refers to AA alkaline batteries or nickel batteries that are considered dry batteries. So carriers, again, will want an MSDS even to prove that the battery is not lithium. And we've even seen specifically Shenzhen and Guangzhou airports not want to accept dry batteries. The rules say that batteries have to be insulated in such a manner to prevent like shock or accidental fire. So if your supplier hasn't package your batteries that comply with those regulations, they will reject them. So again, it's all circling back with your supplier, making sure they have the proper documentation for nickel, alkaline, or lithium batteries, and that they're following the packing instructions in IATA, which says exactly how to pack batteries that are safe for transport. So if an airline receives a shipment, opens a carton, see they're not properly insulated or any other requirements are followed, they will definitely reject them. Brady's asking, so we're using an RCR 123A 650 milliamp 3.7 volt lithium-ion battery for our smart motion sensor. It's not inside the product, but it is included in the packaging. Are there any restrictions where we can ship? So there is another packing instruction similar to PI 967. It's called PI 966, which is batteries packed with equipment, like in this example. So under this regulation, you're allowed to ship a product with 2 spares along with it. But the spares have to be a part of the unit packaging as would be sold in retail. It can't just be like this unit and then 2 spare batteries loose in the master carton with it. So as long as your spare batteries are a part of the original packaging and it doesn't exceed 2, then again, that the 100-hour cutoff still applies as with PI 967. As long as the MSDS confirms not over 100, it'll be a Section 2 non-DG battery. And then Julie asks, and is there a list of dangerous goods somewhere that we could refer to? So you would have to get a copy of IATA's dangerous goods regulation. I don't think there's an online version, but you can purchase from IATA. Also, there's a regulation called 49 CFR, published by Department of Transportation in the US. That is available online. If you just Google 49 CFR, dangerous goods list, the table is exactly the same because these dangerous goods items are universal between any country in the United Nations. So, and there it would have a dangerous goods list of, I guess, all dangerous goods known to man at this point. Jasper is asking, can you comment on any additional FedEx shipping requirements domestic, international using a carrier out of Hong Kong? First, using a carrier out of Hong Kong. So when shipping goods internationally, there are 2 systems. There's a freight system, which freight forwarders move under, and then there's the express system, which FedEx, DHL, UPS move under. They actually have completely different rules regarding dangerous goods and customs. So I can't really comment on the express carrier service. You'd have to contact them directly. But I think the express carriers are pretty good at putting on their websites what dangerous goods they accept and what commodities require certain documentations for them to transport. Because they own their own aircraft, so they again make their own rules. Whereas a freight forwarder doesn't own any aircraft, we just coordinate large amounts of freight for an airline to accept. So Ryan asked, may I ask if you foresee any major changes to IATA regulations for 2018? I actually attend IATA's lithium battery conference every year, and what they talked about this year, the major changes for 2018 is regarding palletization. So before you could put a class 9 lithium battery shipment with any other dangerous goods. They have further restricted that to certain DGs that are liable to cause fire, for example. So if the airline is palletizing or if your supplier is palletizing and you're shipping multiple types of dangerous goods, lithium batteries now have to be segregated on their own pallet. But as far as like watt-hour restrictions and classification as a power bank being DG or not, none of that has changed from 2017. When will the new IATA regulation regarding smart luggage issued in May being implemented? These regulations are more stringent than those of the past regarding lithium-ion batteries. So anytime IATA puts out a circular saying, here's how we recommend to ship dangerous goods, they're effective immediately, unless they say on their effective certain date. But if there's no date, they're effective immediately. And these circulars come out because of airlines complaining like, hey, we're seeing a lot of this certain instance. Please put out some documentation for the general public. And so IATA will create this. Basically, this circular, if you go on IATA website and look up smart luggage, you can download this pamphlet if you're importing smart luggage. Basically, it just states that smart luggage cannot be considered a product with a battery inside. They are considered power banks because their purpose is to charge a phone, even if they have a secondary purpose of acting as a GPS. Usually the lithium battery is over 20 watt hours. There's no reason to have a battery that strong to power a GPS locator. So the battery is designed to charge a phone, therefore it will be considered a power bank by all airlines and even IATA. And I talked to a client about this the other day as well. So if you are to import smart luggage, you have to make sure the battery is removable because no lithium-ion battery is allowed as checked baggage for like just normal passenger flights. So you want to make sure that it is removable. So Tim asked if I have the MSDS from the vendor for the battery inside, but it's lithium-ion in equipment, I will have to classify example 3480 PI 1B. Further, even if the MSDS indicates a more restrictive transportation method. So yeah, this is a common misconception about MSDSs. So the MSDS will always say UN 3480 lithium-ion batteries because at the time when the battery is offered to this organization to test it, like they don't know if that battery is going inside a product or not, nor do they care. They just receive this battery and like, okay, this is the technical aspects of it, and its classification is UN 3480. But how the supplier packs the battery can actually change the classification. So if the supplier confirms via cargo booking form, commercial invoice, that they've installed this battery in a product, then that changes the classification to UN 3481, packing instruction 965, batteries packed with equipment. Even though the original MSDS will still always say 3480 lithium-ion batteries, the final classification comes from the final assembly of the product, not what the MSDS says. The MSDS is more used for the watt-hour capacity of the battery, because that's not going to change, whether being shipped by itself or in a unit. So as long as the MSDS confirms less than 100 watt-hour, supplier confirms batteries packed in equipment, then it becomes a section. And then next question, most of our products are toys and home products. In our case, in drones, do we have to provide separate MSDS for the battery, even though we have the MSDS? So you can use the same, if the MSDS covers the battery, and that battery is being used in tons of different products, like you don't need a detailed MSDS for each individual product. As long as the battery is the same, that one MSDS is applicable for all products that battery is installed into. So even though we have provided the MSDS. So yeah, again, there's no MSDS for the products, it's just for the battery. Next question. So our product is an electric bike with a battery made up of dozens of cells. These cells are very common Samsung cells. We have the MSDS for that. Does the MSDS need to cover the whole battery or its internal electronics, et cetera, or just the cells within it? So when you're shipping electric bikes or some kind of vehicle that has lithium batteries, the classification actually changes. This won't be a UN 3480 or 3481. This will be, I don't have the UN off the top of my head, but the proper shipping name is Vehicle Power Devices, Lithium Batteries. So this will be a Class 9 shipment altogether. So electric bikes will always be a fully regulated DG item. But you will need the MSDS for the batteries that power the device, not so much an MSDS for the bike as a whole. So again, you won't need the MSDS for the electronics, even though there might be some available just for technical aspects. But as far as the dangerous goods application, which the carriers truly care about, they want to know, they want the MSDS for what's dangerous, which is the batteries within that bike. We have a question, Travis, what is the difference between an SDS and an MSDS? So an MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet, is just the old original term that everyone uses. But now we are switching to the Safety Data Sheet, SDS. It's just the new terminology. Both are acceptable. I guess they're trying to kill MSDS because it's too long to write. But yeah, they're both exactly the same. There's no difference. Also, we rarely ship air, rather ocean freight. Are the regulations as strict with ocean freight? So again, IMDG, which is the governing body that sets dangerous goods regulations for ocean, it is much simpler to send via ocean. So again, that 100 watt hour is your cutoff, except that applies to lithium batteries pure or lithium batteries containing equipment. As long as the MSDS confirms that the lithium battery does not exceed 100 watt hour, then it will be considered a non-DG shipment. And as long as it's packed in accordance with special provision A133, or sorry, A188 of IMDG. But again, it's your supplier's responsibility to know that and to follow that special provision to make sure the batteries are packed in accordance with installation requirements and all that good stuff. But it is much cheaper. It's much easier to ship via ocean. Again, in MSDS is the same process though is required. You have to send the MSDS with the supplier booking form to the ocean carrier to confirm DG classification and to see if they'll accept it. Same with air. Ocean carriers can still reject shipments for no reason and change their mind day to day. So another thing to consider. So are smart luggage containing lithium-ion batteries considered containing equipment? So unfortunately, they're not. So according to that IATA circular that was put out concerning smart luggage, no smart luggage can ever be considered containing equipment. Its purpose, whether primary or not, is to charge other phones, and therefore it will always be considered a power bank and subject to PI 965 regulations. Are there any other documents other than the MSDS I have to ask from my supplier? So there is another document out there called the UN 38.3 test report. Usually the MSDS says that the battery has been tested under UN 30.3, but if it does not, and the carrier also wishes to ask for it, they could. Again, this is just a carrier by carrier requirement. And again, sometimes one carrier will say yes, and the next day they say no. But it's always good to have the UN 38.3 test report on hand. They just put the battery through like vibration tests, heat tests, stuff like that. So it's always good. Your supplier, again, is required to have these on hand. Another thing I forgot to mention, so whether your battery is classified as DG or not, you'll need to ship it out of Hong Kong for your greatest chances of success, because China has restricted all dangerous goods in or out of the country without prior approval, and that's why, well, Hong Kong is still, as of now, governed separately and can make their own trade rules. So that's why most lithium batteries are pushed out of Hong Kong. But even if your battery is classified as DG, it still needs to go out of Hong Kong. Sometimes you're able to ship out of Shanghai, but if you do that, there is another document that is needed. It's called the Air Certification for Safe Transport, or for ocean, it's the Sea Certification for Safe Transport. It's put out by the Shanghai Research Institute, so your supplier would have to contact them, pay for their certification requirements, and obtain that. So to ship out of Shanghai, your maximum chances of success for DG export, have the valid MSDS, have a valid UN 38.3 test report, and then have a valid sea or air certification for safe transport from this Shanghai Chemical Research Institute. Who should be the one supplying the appropriate docs, DG, CERT, and MSDS to Flexport, supplier or us? So your supplier, again, is required to have all these docs by law. So basically how it works is your supplier would furnish these documents to our origin team. Origin team will review and then offer the shipment for transport to the carrier. The carrier is the final authority that looks everything over, and they'll say yes or no. So as long as your supplier has all the docs, there's no reason that will like bug you for it. The only thing is, at quoting, if you're not sure if your battery will fall under DG rules or not, you should furnish those docs at quoting so we could do that check for you. And if you've had issues with an airline or ocean carrier accepting your shipment, it's always good to have all those documents out at quoting as well, so we could just double check with the carrier before you move forward with the shipment and accept a quote. Next question, does US Customs has any restrictions on lithium batteries? So no, US Customs doesn't regulate lithium batteries. They're just going to treat it based off HS classification and assign a certain import duty for that. But as far as dangerous goods regulations, it's two separate bodies. And how about the LED that has no batteries? Do we have to provide an MSDS for it? Yeah, if you have a product that's powered by LED and there are no batteries, there's nothing inherently dangerous about it, then there's no need for an MSDS. But again, it's not up to you to determine, does my LED, is it considered a dangerous product or not? Or if I'm shipping cosmetics, we get this question a lot, is this cosmetic dangerous or not? Your supplier has to declare this to you. They have to say like, hey, I've created a dangerous good item. And then they should furnish all the docs. If not, you want to push them for it. And if they don't know what an MSDS is or are unsure if the LED is dangerous or not, then you should consider working with a different supplier, because it's only, that problem's only going to get worse as we try to get a carrier to accept that shipment. Does U.S. Customs, oh, I see it. I mean importing. So no. So when you're trying to clear U.S. Customs through importing to the U.S., they don't look at lithium batteries as anything special. So it doesn't affect the import process. Is it true that all products, including batteries, need to be shipped via Hong Kong airport? Does this cause delays, factories in Shenzhen? So yes, it's true. Lithium batteries need to leave out of Hong Kong, whether they're DG or not. Whether it causes a delay, I mean, as everyone's probably well aware of, the air situation out of Hong Kong has reached unprecedented levels, so air rates are just skyrocketing across the board. So you should be looking at higher costs to ship out of Hong Kong during fourth quarter right now. But as far as delays, I mean, it just takes an extra day to bring your products from Shenzhen into Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is considered a separate country, so you have to pay export customs clearance out of Shenzhen into Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong export clearance out of Hong Kong to wherever it's going. So there are extra costs with it, but unfortunately that is the only option. Is shipping lithium-ion batteries typically easier via sea freight versus air? Everything, whether it be DG or not, is always easier shipping sea freight. The rules are much, or the limits are much higher, and they're much more loose, but the documentation needed is still the same. As long as you have a valid MSDS and UN 38.3 test report or C certification for transport from Shanghai, as long as those are all valid, yes, much easier to ship via sea. Also, maximum net weight per package is the master carton itself, or each package of the equipment which contains the battery. What about skids under breakdown for the 5 kilogram limit? So this is what is referring to. So under packing instruction 967, section 2, non-DG batteries containing equipment. To fly on passenger aircraft and cargo aircraft, so most airline options are available to you, you're allowed a maximum net battery weight of 5 kilograms per master carton. So that refers to just the actual weight of the lithium battery itself. So if you're shipping Bluetooth speakers, it's not the weight of the speaker, just the net weight. So if you have big master cartons and your batteries are very heavy and you exceed 5 kilograms per master carton of lithium battery weight, then you're restricted to just cargo aircraft only shipments. So that cuts your supply dramatically and will obviously increase your air rate and limited departures out of there. We have lithium-powered solar generators manufactured in China and shipped to us as UN 3480. This is a requirement by China. Domestically, we ship them as 3481 because the batteries aren't equipment. Why would they require this? Is it okay to use the same overpack to ship pallets as received once they're in the US? So if you're shipping out of mainland China, like let's say Shanghai, this can be a requirement that the country stipulates. So even though it is a battery inside a product, if the battery is so powerful, the government could deem that, hey, we want this to be class 9 anyways, even though IATA says it's not. They have full authority to do so. But again, if this comes to the US doesn't have to have that same stance and can say, yeah, we classify this as UN 3481. And unfortunately, that's just a country-to-country discretion that they have. So is it okay to use the same overpack to ship pallets as received once in the US? Yeah, so it's okay up until January 1st of 2018. It'll be okay to ship lithium batteries in any overpack, but starting January 1st, 2018, Lithium batteries, class 9, have to be segregated from all other dangerous goods. They can't be in the same overpack. So you can mix it with other non-DG, that's fine. But you can't mix class 9 with any other classes in the same overpack and or pallet. How have IATA/airlines interpreted equivalent protection for PI 967? Battery is afforded equivalent protection by the equipment in which it is contained. So it is honestly up to airline discretion what they think equivalent protection is. So once they do their random inspection of the master cartons and see what the product is, they will open it and see how the batteries are insulated or contained in such equipment. So if they find that it meets the requirements, it'll be good. If not, they will tell you and they'll reject the shipment. Unfortunately, I don't think the airlines make this very easy to know. Like, there's no website that I know of on their pages where you can just list out the requirements for lithium batteries as it changes daily. So unfortunately, I can't offer too much insight on how an airline would interpret that statement. Do most carriers consider sealed hard plastic power banks that have lithium-ion cells as equipment with batteries inside? No, so no carrier will consider a power bank, no matter how well it's insulated or designed. If your product powers another product, it'll always be considered a pure battery, PI 965, unfortunately. It's always going to be a class 9 shipment. UN 3171, thank you. I think that's for vehicles powered by a lithium battery. So shipping via FedEx Express, quantity 10 power banks, each with power bank less than 100 watt hour. How does that differ than the same shipment with only 2 power banks in terms of labeling and documentation? So there is a way to ship power banks and or lithium batteries as non-DG, but it's very, very restrictive and usually doesn't make most economical sense for shippers. So in order to do this, you're only allowed to ship 1 master carton per consignment. And that single master carton can have a maximum of 2 batteries in it, power banks or not. And those batteries cannot exceed 100 watt hour. So as long as you're only shipping 2 batteries in 1 box under 100 watt hour, you don't need, it won't require DG classification. It'll be considered a PI 965 Section 2 battery. Unfortunately, that's the only way. Do you have experience shipping lithium batteries to Australia? What's the best way, since airports in Australia don't accept any more 3480 and 3490? Unfortunately, I don't have too much experience shipping into Australia. So it wouldn't be really an airport restriction, more of like country restriction. So if the government of Australia has restricted to accept that, that's just the stance they take. With every country restriction, there's always a process for getting what's called an exemption or an approval. So if you request an approval from the state authority, like the Civil Aviation Authority of the country, whether it be China or Australia, you can grant an approval to import products, even though they say they're restricted. But obviously you're dealing with the government, and it's very, very difficult, and expect that to take many months. But it is always possible to get country exceptions from the rules they publish. Will these batteries ship under DG rate or regular air rates? So if the DG classification comes back and your battery is a Section 2 battery, non-DG, there won't be any DG rates. There might be like a DG handling fee, like a one-time fee of like 100, 200. I mean, it depends on the air carrier. But if your shipment is a Class 9 DG battery, then your whole air rate will change for a dangerous goods shipment. And then also the trucker at destination will also charge you a hazmat rate for carrying a dangerous goods shipment. Looks like I've reached the end of the questions. Oh, got one more. Can you please answer the same question about rates relating to ocean than rail? Yeah, so the same thing applies. if the ocean carrier agrees that the classification is non-DG, there shouldn't be any extra charges, except maybe a flat DG handling fee, but it should be very nominal, like $100 around there. But if they determine that it is Class 9 DG battery, there will be a freight rate that accompanies that DG classification, and also the trucker, same thing. And well, the rail portion is always will be baked into your carrier. So whenever you're given a freight rate that includes rail, that includes the ocean leg and the rail leg. So the DG rate will always be baked in for the whole journey, port to port. But yeah, the trucker will also charge hazmat, whether it's came in on an ocean or came in on an airplane. So another question, are lithium classifications that do not require a Class 9 label considered not DG? That's correct. So anytime a shipment has been deemed needing a Class anything label, it is officially a dangerous goods shipment. If it does not have a Class 9 label, it is not a dangerous goods shipment. So when you have a non-DG battery shipment, all that's required for most cases is a lithium handling mark, which is just like a red and white label with a little battery on fire on it. Again, your supplier is responsible for knowing when the carton needs a Class 9 label or needs a lithium battery mark, or both, or not at all. So please refer to them to make sure they properly prepare their goods for transport. Again, if they have no idea what you're talking about, you need to find a different supplier. So let's say our supplier is not a manufacturer and only holds goods in their warehouse for resale. If they are not hazmat certified, who can help us for any export shipment? So you will need to contact some agency in China, some warehouse that has DG certified people on staff that your warehouse for resale can send the goods to, so they can properly prepare the goods for transport. China has a lot of these, the US has a lot of these. We recognize that a lot of shippers or clients that live in the US want to send goods but have no idea how to handle DG certifications. But there's plenty of resources and warehouses out there that specifically do this. You just drop off your goods to them, they'll inspect everything and create all the labels, all the documentation needed, and properly prepare for transport. So it's just doing the legwork and finding that 3PL solution, whether in China or US, that can be your DG certification expert out there. Okay, so the slides will be sent up as a follow-up email by end of business day today. And if nobody else has any more questions, thank you guys for attending. I'm always available, travis@flexport.com, if you have any further questions regarding dangerous goods of any type. I'd be happy to answer them and make sure you're set up to maximize your chances of actually getting these things out of China. So thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.